Hi, I'm Nathan, and today we're going to be discussing the changes we made to the classes in patch 1.3 and the final patch 1.4. I will primarily be going over the changes related to game fit, class identity, consistency, and cohesiveness, as I covered most of the other changes in my previous videos. Let's discuss the first patch note, which is to change the name of the SEAL class to Marksman. This was because even though we had some pretty crazy classes like DJ or Mad Scientist, this name just didn't feel like it fit. But why is that? Well, for one, we had been working on making a lot of our classes less faction-specific, and SEAL seemed pretty relegated to the Navy. Second, I'm not entirely sure the first thing that comes to mind is Navy SEALs. Besides, the acronym Sea, Land, Air doesn't really fit in a space game, unless you change the S to space and the E to Earth or something. Yeah, I don't know. And lastly, I felt like it was a little too specific to something that was in the real world. And because of that, it felt like it slowly broke the immersion of the game. It'd be like calling our computer specialist class a Best Buy employee. The name just didn't fit, so we changed it to something more generic and more suited to the class as a whole. The merchants' changes were a little more interesting, helping them add more interactions between their abilities and allowing for more natural combos. The trade contact ability used to give a character a free random item at the start of every session, which, truthfully, is not really a great ability, especially because there's no set time for how long a session is and how often one is played. So, in this update, we allowed the ability to grant a character an item every time a player rolled a critical hit. Already much more powerful, as you can see. But, as I said, I wanted to give them a natural combo to their kit. In this case, it worked well with their Bribe ability, which allows a character to destroy an item and gain a bonus to their roll. This change to Trade Contact allowed the character to have a source of items, which in turn allows them to use it much more frequently, and makes the class feel a lot more fun to play. The Assassin was reworked for similar reasons. Originally, their First Strike ability allowed them to deal double damage on their first attack when not in combat. This was changed to allow the character to deal double damage when they were disguised and invisible as well. This played well with, well, their disguise and invisibility skills, which allowed them to use this ability more often. This is important because in this version of Soul, a player usually only had 3 or 4 abilities total, and generally from our campaigns and playtesting of this game, we ended up only having about 2 combats per session, which would mean that you would only really be able to use this ability twice. Again, allowing this ability to be used more frequently felt a lot better. Now I admit the Assassin archetype in actuality should be able to kill a target before combat even starts, meaning if they utilize this ability properly, they should be able to get more use out of it, as killing a target instantly and dragging them into the shadows should allow you to not be able to start an all-out brawl with all your other enemies. In this case, the ability could have been tripled or quadrupled in damage, or use something like the Dagger's innate passive ability, Killing Blow, which allows you to kill an enemy when at low health. However, our sessions didn't usually play like that, and we decided to opt for the ability to use more frequently, rather than making it more powerful. The Doctor was slightly different and was reworked due to pacing issues, mostly meaning they slowed the game down. The Intensive Surgery ability used to make the Doctor and the target they chose unable to move or perform actions for 3 whole turns. Then the target would be healed to full health after. The biggest problem with this is some fights could literally last 3 turns, not to mention it was incredibly boring to use, not only for the Doctor, but also the target being healed as well. It also doesn't say if you're invulnerable or the Doctor gets healed, which means you could literally be killed just standing there healing. Anyway, we changed this to a toggleable ability, where the Doctor was able to heal for double at the cost of 2 concentration. This made the game move much faster while providing a similar benefit. Also, you know, it was actually fun. I don't really have much more to say on this one, other than that, what were we thinking making this one? I don't know. We also had done a good amount of reworking in patch 1.4 as well. This was when the trait system was introduced, which I talked about in my stat system video. So I'm gonna mainly skip over those, as it was mostly balancing around that and kind of boring. Instead, we're gonna talk about the complete engineer class rework. The concept of the engineer had a clear theme and archetype, however, the abilities they had didn't feel like they played well together. Like the merchant, they had little natural ability synergy. So let's just look at their abilities to show you what I mean. Jared gave a +3 bonus to crafting, which unfortunately wasn't an existing system in Soul, so technically this ability wasn't very useful. However, with Soul having a game master and being able to control the game, it could be made to work either way. Construct Robot, an ability allowing the user to make a robot pet. This used an item to make a pet, which was cool, but unless you had the ability to gain items, not too ideal. Overclock, which gave a little bit of synergy as it allowed your pets to move faster and deal more damage. However, it didn't really feel all that impactful as it was only +1 move and +1 damage. Repair, which allowed you to heal your robot. However, this was only for 5 stamina, which a robot typically had 10. So if at all possible, it made more sense to create another robot rather than healing it. Additionally, repair had a higher concentration cost, which just further accentuated the problem. And lastly, EM Expert, which gave you 2 EMP grenades at the start of every combat, which was arguably anti-synergy, as EMPs would disable your robots if you end up missing with your grenade. In synopsis, EM Expert and Jerry Rig were outside of the robotics theme that we had going for most of the other abilities, and repair wasn't that great, and generally something else was picked over it. So that pretty much left Construct Robot, which couldn't be used very often, and Overclock, which just felt underwhelming. To fix that, we decided to lean harder into the robotics portion, and renamed it Robotics Engineer. This seemed like the part that players gravitated toward the most, as it was our only pet class in the game at the time. However, we wanted to give a player more options for different types of pets without having the item cost of the original ability. This would allow them to diversify their pets while playing to the original fantasy of having a robot army behind you. For that reason, we gave them the ability Construct BattleBot, Construct MedicBot, and Construct Tesla Sentry. Construct BattleBot was essentially the same thing as Construct Robot, although it was balanced to fit not having an item's power. We also integrated the new health system called Plate into their designs as well. A health system for non-organic beings or objects, such as robots or vehicles. Construct MedicBot helped to add diversity for the number of robots, and was also sort of a spiritual successor to Repair. Additionally, it allowed the Robotics Engineer to be a healing class as well. And the last of the robots was Construct Tesla Sentry, which created a stationary pet that created a 5x5 EMP field, helping them keep their EMP grenade ability alive, but also function a little bit better with their kit. After the robots themselves, they also had the ability Command Mimic and Hardworking. Command Mimic allowed your pets to benefit from your equipped weapon passives. This was our substitute for using items to create pets, along with adding a bit of a way for your pets to scale as your character did. Furthermore, this helped as a way to replace Overclock, as it helped empower your pets, but felt more impactful. And lastly, Hardworking allowed for the engineer to use as many abilities they wanted to on a turn, however, the ability would then cost double. Additional uses would increase the multiplier by 1 each time as well. This ability was added to allow the engineer to create a large amount of robots very quickly if needed, but at the detriment of not being able to create as many later on in the fight. I think this rework was pretty good, but looking back at it now, I think I would have changed the Tesla Sentry a little bit. I feel like if it had the ability to move, it would feel a little bit more alive, rather than just sitting there. You could place it up to 8 spaces away, which gave it some utility in that sense, but in practice, it ended up just feeling like the EMP grenade. If we gave it an ability to move and use its EMP more like an attack, I think that would have ended up making it more interesting. The last thing I want to mention about this is that I feel like there's something a little bit lost with the robot not being made from an item. I can see a different way of making their kit, allowing them to gain items passively, like the merchant's trade contact ability, and then combo that with their original Jerry Rig ability, allowing them to make custom weapons, and then in turn making custom robots. Of course, this would mean a crafting system would have to exist in the first place. That being said, I think the new kit was a good compromise. Besides, keeping track of a bunch of pets made out of different items would be a pretty big hassle. If you have any thoughts on these changes that we made, I would love to hear your opinion. If you'd like to learn more about how to play Soul or more about the game in general, please check out soulrpg.com. We also have a Discord server where we discuss more things about Soul and game design in general. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.